Serious, what would you not have believed had you not seen it with your own eyes? I saw our llama effortlessly hop over our 6-foot fence, walk across the yard, and hop another 6-foot fence to be with his cow friends. Adorable. I saw a cat sleeping on the back of a woolly sheep. It was on a small farm belonging to friends of my parents. The sheep stood perfectly still in its stall as the cat slept peacefully on its warm back. Later, the farmer told me that the sheep and cat were friends and that the cat slept on the sheep's back regularly on cold days. I think cats' primary function in life is to find warm places to sleep on. My mom tells a lot of stories about her days working as a backup singer in the early 70s. She had talked a few times about knowing a particular musician back then, and I just kind of was, okay mom, thinking maybe she got called in once to do some vocals and that was it. So one day I found one of this artist's albums had been reissued on CD, picked it up cheap at a local music store, thinking my mom would like it as it's one I hadn't seen in her collection. She tore off the cellophane and inside on the liner notes, there are photos of the band from around the time the album had been recorded back in 1970. Right there on the 5th or 6th page is a picture of my mom sitting on a bar stool in the recording studio. I saw a pigeon eat a grasshopper and it had a mean face as it was attacking him. It was like if you had a picture of a pigeon and then on like Microsoft Paint or some crap you put a black line for his eyebrow and you tilt it so he looks mean. You know what I'm saying? That's what I saw. A mean butt pigeon eating a grasshopper. Lumfeo. The grasshopper had it coming. Probably talked about fricking the pigeon's mom. I have a perfect story for this. So my friends and I just reached the age to be able to go bridge jumping. Not like suicide but at a safe height into deep enough water. My friend, Danny, jumped off the bridge, did a backflip, goes underwater for 15 seconds or so, and then comes up holding a bass. Coolest kid I've ever met. Now that's badass. One time I was cleaning my dog's eye gunk out with a soft paper towel and after we're done doing that he goes frickin' nuts for some reason. He's running around the living room, being all cute and crazy, whatever. He manages to get a hold of the paper towel I was still holding, does the thing where he shakes it a little bit, opens his mouth and it's gone. He just freaking inhaled it. Like 1 second it was there, the next it wasn't. It was like 11 at night and me and my mom were looking at each other and wondering if it was real. And yes, he was okay afterwards. Never had any tummy problems and he's still a healthy boy. I still don't know how he ate it that fast. It was freaking astonishing. Went to pick up a cat that was abandoned and that the sweet lady who had tried to rescue him couldn't keep. The entire visit, lasting only 5 minutes, is the fakest thing I've ever heard and I would never believe any of it. It all truly happened. First of all, as my family and I walked up to the house there was a little kid on a tricycle who stopped suddenly, peered at us and said, "You here for the cat?" We said yes. And he looked at us solemnly and emphatically said, "That cat's mean," and tricycled off. Stage properly set. We went to the door. Note that the lady who had the cat had told us that the reason she couldn't keep him was because he didn't get along with her dogs. That did not prepare us for the 2 little dogs huddling by this woman's legs when she opened the door. These dogs looked like they had seen heck, and somehow descended to an even greater level of torment and dreamed of returning to heck. They didn't move unless she did, as if direct physical contact with her was their only lifeline. The woman looked flustered and apologized to us. She said she couldn't catch the cat. She'd been trying and all she could manage was trapping him in the garage. She said she hoped we could catch him in there but she wasn't sure we'd be able to. We proceeded to the garage, all 5 of us, and rapidly entered the garage keeping the window of door open for cat escape as short as possible. We do not see the cat, but the lady assures us he's trapped in here. My dad, just to prepare, opens the door of the cat carrier we brought and sets it on the floor. We're all looking at each other unsure where to start. The cat promptly emerges. He's enormous, scarred, and chubby. He saunters out from under some stuff with total nonchalant confidence, wins between all of my family's legs, ignoring the woman who had been taking care of him for the past month mind you, walks right into the cat carrier, turns, and sits down. He waits patiently for my dad to close the door. We awkwardly say thanks to the slack-jawed woman, and we take him home. The epilogue is that we get back to our house and our 4 65 100-pound dogs We place the carrier so the cat has some space, then open the door, prepared to wait for him to cautiously emerge and get comfortable. This does not happen. Instead, he immediately leaves the carrier, takes one look around, and throws himself at our dogs. He's hissing and swatting and drives them all, terrified, into a corner. He beats on them a little longer for good measure, until they're cowering and whimpering. Then he goes directly to the main bedroom bed, lays square in the middle and curls up. I swear he was smirking. Please tell me you still have this cat. I was sitting in a hot tub in the middle of a perfect quiet, cloudless night. Just happened to be looking up at the stars. I noticed a few stars disappear for a second, then a few more. I kept following these disappearing stars until I noticed a black triangle object moving across the sky. It was actually darker than the sky, which is why I could see it. It was huge, moving very fast, and made absolutely no noise. Followed it across the sky until it went out of sight. People I tell still give me that look as if I am making it up. It was a star destroyer. My horse, when he bounced a gate off to get to the other pasture, he was halfway across the downed gate when we yelled at him, "Chansey, get over here." He actually turned around and came back in, the whole while stomping his feet tantrum style. We were shocked. It was pretty funny to see. Back in my online pokering days about a decade ago, I pulled pocket aces in 3 consecutive hands. The odds of that happening are 10, 648, 000/1. I lost 2 out of the 3 hands. Those are high odds. I have witnessed a lot with animals. I have seen a horse use a blunt stick stuck in the ground to scratch inside his foreskin. I have seen jaguars try to convince trainers the meat was stuck in the food chute so they would put fire hands and reach. This was a game. One of my favorites was watching a male silverback gorilla push a flower pot in his cage over towards a keeper, stand on it and hold up his arms to make himself look as big as he could. He wanted us gone and the keeper had her back to the bars. He went from subtle to bucket of bricks in 10 minutes. Animals are in general much smarter than people give them credit for. They don't speak our languages, but they can certainly communicate and learn how to manipulate us. As a teen, my friend said nonchalantly that his room was haunted. I was like, sure. One day we were sitting on his floor assembling a model and his door just opened. I was like, oh, and when I turned to look, it suddenly closed shut. This repeated about 4 times and it really started to freak me out. And no, there was no sibling sitting on the other side with a piece of string or such playing a prank. Other weird stuff would happen. Like one day one of his windows wouldn't open, even though it was unlocked, so I opened the adjacent one. After we left and came back, the window I couldn't open was open, and the other was shut. After anything weird like that, my friend would just say, yeah, I told you. About 7 years ago I worked as a tutor in the late afternoon and evening for a company in a really rich area. We parked in a multi-story garage that by the time we left was open, so we never had to pay. We were always parked by really expensive BMWs, Mercedes, etc. since we arrived a few hours before 5 p.m. My car was in the shop one time, so I took my then boyfriend's 1989 Chevy Silverado, K1500 back then, to work and parked in the garage. When I came out about 5 hours later, I was shocked to see the truck in a different parking spot, the exact opposite one it was in. As I approached it, it was perfectly between the lines of the new spot, and the only off thing was that the tailgate was pressed against the chain link fence that was between the ramp and edge that was separating the levels. This was on a slope and not flat. Nothing looked amiss and no other car was best to it, but I never would back into a spot in this garage anyway, and I never parked on that side. I get in and the truck is in reverse, not park, steering wheel shifter. It wasn't moving when I got out to go to work, but eventually this gigantic rusted out truck backed into a, luckily, empty spot on its own, perfectly between the lines, without hitting any parked or moving vehicles in this garage. After that, I always made sure it was in park, as it would sometimes stick and you'd have to push hard to get it into park. This event being the first time I realized it. It's wonderful no one got hurt, but also importantly you didn't accrue several $1,000s in charges. A guy got wheeled into our by his very irate wife with a severe hand injury. The skin of his forearm was sliced off like it was hacked, but really cleanly. The skin would have flapped around if he didn't hold onto it when he came in. Reeked of booze too. Anyway, we did the usual interview of filling up the papers, and the team could barely hold our laughter back. We apologized for some elicited giggles. It turns out he was drinking and got into a bar fight with some Japanese man who pulled out a freaking katana out of nowhere and tried to bring it down on his head. Instead of running, he tried to catch the katana coming down anime style between his palms but missed, so it sliced his forearm. We really thought he was drunk, but the wife said it was all true. Ah, a man of culture. I saw a very small bird eat a cherry whole, like I saw the bulge from swallowing, and then a hawk stalked it, pinned it down midair, and suddenly things took a turn of completely the circle of life. The hawk ripped the head off of the small bird and a cat came out of a bush and killed the hawk. About 6 or 7 years ago I worked as a camp counselor in Fishkill, NY. Our cabins were in a very isolated area pretty deep in the woods. We always put the kids to bed around 10 PM and around 11 I would usually sneak out to meet this girl that also worked there, but was in an all-girls cabin about a quarter-mile down the main path. I would always walk off to the side of the path so I wouldn't be seen. One night something I will never forget happened. As I was walking through the woods I heard rustling in a bush near me. I obviously investigated because I was dumb and curious, and when I walked over, this solid black little humanoid thing jumped out and looked at me. It was about 2-3 feet tall but had perfect human proportions. I stared at it for a second trying to figure out WTF I was looking at, and it bolted, ran away on 2 legs, just like a human would, back into the woods. I couldn't make out any features because how dark it was, but this thing was incredibly fast, like superhuman or animal fast. I thought maybe it could have been one of our kids that snuck out, but that didn't make any sense either. All our kids were age 14-17 and this thing was toddler size at best. I really have no effing idea what I saw that night, but a lot of other strange stuff happened in those woods as well. I would put money on it having been a freaking raccoon. I have witnessed one wall up to a campsite, stand on there its legs, and carry off a full box of donuts, all while walking on 2 feet like a tiny little goblin. On the 4th of July, I witnessed 2 firework rockets being set off. One firework drifted sideways and collided with the other midair. The result was an abomination of 2 separate fireworks combined into a massive one. I highly doubt that anyone will ever be able to purposely replicate it, and it is one of the most amazing things I have ever seen. I watched an 8-year boy overpower and throw off 6 grown men, 2 of whom were strength coaches for a state university. He was about 70 pounds. They literally could not contain him. He had started the thing by freaking out and breaking windows, chairs, desks, hitting kids, etc. Craziest thing I've seen. I don't necessarily believe in demon possession, but that was superhuman and really disturbing to watch. Well, you can't really use all your strength on a child going apeshit. I bet if they really put the smack down things would have been different. One summer I went on a hiking trip with a couple friends. One friend is a literal mountain man. He hunts, goes fishing, carves stuff out of wood, that whole thing. Basically he's the guy you want with you if you ever get lost in the wilderness. Anyway, we make it to our camping spot after about 6 hours and we decide to dump our gear and hike up a nearby mountain for a better view. Keep in mind this mountain is steep. We are on our hands and knees climbing up using the grass to hold on to. About halfway up we see a bunch of grouse hiding in the bushes below us. We all spend a couple minutes seeing if we can caveman it and catch us some dinner by trying to hit the grouse with rocks. Obviously, we suck at throwing rocks and don't get anywhere. Then Mountain Man comes up. He has, in his hands, a rock about the size of a basketball. He looks below and gives the rock a small toss. That's when I saw it. The rock drops below, hits one bird that was hiding in a bush, bounces in the air, then proceeds to hit another bird on its second bounce. I didn't believe he hit 2 birds until he went down and picked both of them up with a surprised face. I know it was probably luck, but he's the only person I've ever heard of actually killing 2 birds with 1 stone. That night we cooked the grouse with some seasonings we had and went to bed with full bellies. TLDR, friend killed 2 birds with 1 stone. That beats the time I was up at 5:15 AM, sitting outside, smoking and watching a robin hopping in the grass, then pause, dong its head and pull out a plump, juicy earthworm. No one else was up, and I saw the early bird get the worm. a camel hanging out at the Great Wall of China in the middle of January. It was my first time in China. It was my first time seeing a camel in person. And all around I was confused as to what a camel was doing just hanging out there. Then again, maybe the camel was confused as to why I was there as well. So I guess we are even. Near the end of middle school in 8th there was a rat pigeon that suddenly blew up. Did not see what caused it and no one saw apparently, and down came the feathers. Until now, even 3 years later, me and some other classmates from that middle school that saw it happen still explain how we saw a ball of feathers rain down suddenly. Our new classmates in our high school don't believe us and even gave us an explanation that the rat pigeon ate rice so it blew up. Otherwise I cannot explain what happened except I saw rock pigeons suddenly turn into a ball of feathers. Peregrines can hit prey, like pigeons, at 200 plus mph. I wouldn't be surprised if you witnessed a hit and just didn't realize it. Philippines. President siding with the Chinese nationals who rammed the boat of sleeping Filipino fishermen and left them to drown inside REs. President and his disciples tried to paint the fishermen as part of some destabilization scheme against the current administration. Dude, that is pretty crazy though. Not much he does surprises me now honestly. I saw a parrot eating an ice cream cone. Apparently, it was the parrot's 23rd birthday and the owner took it to the Dairy Queen. It just stood on the man's shoulder with the cone in one claw and ate it like a human would. Birds, especially parrots, but even pet pigeons, are freaking weird dude. They're like people trapped in feathery bodies. They express a full range of human emotion, happiness, sadness, toddler-style temper tantrums, and even if they can't learn human words you realize they have their own vocab and body language for things like hungry, tired, pet me. When I was a teenager, I was fooling around with psychic training exercises, thinking I could get good at telekinesis, prediction, etc. With a standard deck of cards, shuffled between guesses, I correctly guessed the sweetened number of 16 cards in a row, scared myself shitless and stopped doing it shortly thereafter. When I lived with my dad about a decade ago, one night we're watching TV and we hear one of our cats, Caesar, was very aggressive towards one of our other cats, Tinkerbell. So I went over and grabbed Caesar by his scruff and carried him over to the cat tree and plopped him down and pointed at him and said in a loud tone, "Don't move. You're in timeout." My dad and I go back to watching TV and not but a few seconds later, we hear a bunch of thumping and kicking. We look back at the cat tree and Caesar had gone into the little house on it and was rolling around flailing his limbs like a 5-year-old throwing a tantrum. And then he comes out and just sat there on the edge of the cat tree staring daggers at me. It was hilarious that not only did he listen, but he got pee about it. Therapy works. I was diagnosed with PTSD in 2011 and the resounding therapy changed my perspective on life after an entire childhood ride with abuse of every nature. I thought I was broken and a curse to others until after therapy. Now I am a selective curse to others, because I love to cook and will insist on cooking with friends versus going out to eat. Welcome, my friend, to the healing power of therapy. I have endured a childhood of vicious abuse and was only made a fully functional human being once I went through therapy. Amusingly, I also love to cook, and I love making baked goods for others. Jack Sparrow swaggering down the middle of the road near downtown Tucson, rum in hand, looking a little like he does when he's staring at a beached black pearl being towed to water by shellfish. It made a bit of sense since I was driving through the artsy part of town, but there was nothing going on that would warrant a full cosplay in the hottest part of a summer afternoon. Guess someone just felt like being Jack Sparrow. To this day I wish I'd gotten a picture. I went to the zoo to sketch animals for an art class and was sitting on the floor in the primate area. A chimpanzee I was drawing was super interested in what I was doing. It walked away and came back with a little bundle. He unwrapped and laid out a blanket, took out chalk, sat facing me and started to draw on his enclosure floor. That my best friend would try and get my boyfriend to cheat on me with her. It's been 2 years and I still get anxious about it. You see how tarantulas hiss in Minecraft? I thought it was just sound effects from the game. Until one day, the biggest spider I've ever seen in person was sitting in the middle of the kitchen minding her own business. Big, hairy, even with red eyes. I stood there for 5 seconds admiring if it was really real. I called my brother, who then called my parents after seeing how huge it was. We were on the same page here. Poor dude was shacking. My dad tried to burn it, which backfired because it was coming closer. My dad took the broom to push it back in the corner where it was, and the bee looked at us, raised its front legs, and the noise that came out of that thing was like a pile of sand being poured on concrete. Still shook to this day. Tarantulas hiss in Animal Crossing also. If you put the tarantula and the scorpion in the museum, they circle each other and hiss. It's fun to watch. My dog jumping onto a barbed wire fence, all 4 paws close together. Swing for a second and jump off. Absolutely outstanding. Best part of 11 years or so ago. My partner had a serious head injury and needed a large part of his skull removed. He made a slow recovery and after 10 months had just reached the stage that he could leave the flat by himself, but he remained weak on his right side. Even after 10 months, he could not use a knife and fork, though he could lift the knife. He could not cut with it and had long-term memory problems, particularly with times and dates. He had an operation to put a replacement skull piece in. His ability with time was immediately restored the moment he came round from the anesthetic. He came home with me 3 days later. We had fish and chips when we got back, and we were halfway through the meal before I realized that he was using the knife and fork as if he'd never stopped. 6 weeks later we saw the consultant. I explained excitedly how remarkable his recovery had been. The consultant sat back in his chair and drawled, "Yes, there are people who deny that happens. But then there are people who deny global warming." I wasn't sure whether to punch him or hug him. He's got a point, though, in a weird way. Some things just need more education themselves, more studies performed that make sense to them, and the willingness to combine the two in order for someone to believe something. Other people just need personal experience to believe. I saw a hawk kill a pigeon while trying to withdraw money from an ATM. I was just standing there, hitting buttons like you do, and out of freaking nowhere a pigeon slams into the wall a foot from my left. I screamed in shock and backed away while looking around. The bird is obviously dead. Then I see this hawk is heading for my face. It probably thought I was going to steal its food. I bolted back to my car. I don't use my car at the ATM because it's too low to the ground. The hawk landed on my windshield and stared me down for almost a minute. I got out of there the second the bird got off my car. When I told people at work later, they didn't believe me and thought it was a joke. I'm still kicking myself for not at least trying to take pictures or something. I saw a hawk kill a pigeon while trying to withdraw money from an ATM. I would love to see pics of a hawk using an ATM. Potato sundae. It's ice cream shaped like a potato. I ordered it. My girlfriend was furious at me that we were having a freaking potato for dessert. Suddenly we realized that ain't no potato, but it's ice cream. Honestly, I wouldn't mind having a potato at dessert. Some random dude was driving and he had everything opened. Doors, windows, everything. Have got no idea why there was no police. I was at a gas station. I needed gas and it was very humid outside, so I decided I would go inside to pay for my gas so I could grab a water as well. I finish up pumping the gas and walked into the store to grab a water and then pay. Nothing out of the ordinary there. What was out of the ordinary was this. The second I walked out of the store, a bunch of big unmarked black Fords came speeding up over the curb of the gas station. There were so many of them I couldn't even believe it. It was so sudden and it took me by surprise. So much so that it took me longer than it should have to realize that they had all gotten out of their cars and were tackling some guy to the ground. They were screaming at him to get down and stay down. It was so intense. So this guy was being restrained by these undercover cops in the middle of the intersection while his girlfriend just screamed at him and the undercover officers from the sidewalk. Eventually, after they cuffed the guy and managed to get him to stop resisting his arrest, another undercover officer got her to sit on the sidewalk and calm her down. Her boyfriend was still resisting, screaming bloody murder and saying he didn't do nothing. And then as soon as it had started, it ended. All of a sudden it was over. The undercover cops flee whatever they were drove away, taking the guy and the girl with them. In 2 seconds everything in my small town went back to normal. I remember just standing there pinching myself, making sure that I was not seeing things in the heat. But I could never make this up. I felt like I was an extra in the background of a Criminal Minds episode. Here I was minding my own business 1 minute and another minute 4+ black Ford vehicles are speeding into the gas station parking lot and taking some guy down. I was so shocked I couldn't do anything except stand there and wait for it to be over so I could just drive away. I looked in the news reports for days afterwards and I found nothing. I guess when it's that big of an investigation they intentionally leave the media out of it. They do not want to cause widespread panic so nothing gets released to the public. Because there is no evidence or news report though, no one would believe me. To this day no one believes me, but I saw it happen. I always wonder now what kind of shady crap goes on in town that we aren't allowed to know, the media isn't allowed to tell us. It freaks me out. Big footprints. This is going to a lot of flack, but forever I will always be certain that I saw them in a local state forest I used to frequent. It was the most terrifying thing I've ever seen. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.